Okay, so we're going to do a demo now, and you know that whenever we're doing a real session, there's a huge importance placed on talking, because that's what often allows the charge and the story to come up. So while this is a demo and not a session, what I do want to do, if it's okay with you, Dom, is talk a little bit about what came up in that prac, so we can see what's there, and if we can safely allow just a physical layer to process rather than going into the story and what that looks like. So do you want to come up here? So tell me about what happened just then with your ribs.
Whenever I talk about it, I feel like laughing. I mean, it's ticklish. I mean, I know I'm quite an easily tickled person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like ants crawling on you,
Okay.
feeling on your ribs or on your side,
Okay.
on peaks. So, yeah.
And you told me that your brothers used to tickle you a lot?
Not just my brother, I think cousins as well when we're playing.
Okay.
So that's how it goes.
Okay. And did
To
you
disturb
like it
one
or you
another.
didn't like it?
Of course, there are times where I don't like it.
And then what would happen?
You'll still continue to tickle, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah.
Did you say I don't like it, stop, or no, you just let them?
I don't remember saying no or stop. Or perhaps yes. Different occasions of play, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there were times that you just tell them, no, don't do it.
Do they listen or they do it anyway?
I think they'll still try to find chance to do it because
Okay.
playing, we try to disturb one another.
Okay, so they don't listen to your boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, and that connects to what we were talking about before with your brother.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell me about that, about him not respecting your boundaries?
I sometimes will give unsolicited advice, which I didn't really ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. I think maybe a bit like a tickle.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not so fun. And then, so I mean, he being direct, I think he's quite a upfront person. So that's what he does, I guess.
And it makes you feel how?
Sometimes I feel frustrated or
Okay.
irritated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, I didn't ask for this. Why are you giving me this?
Okay.
And like, I understand your voice, kind of thing. Right?
Did you feel like that with the tickling ever too, frustrated or irritated?
I think yes. Perhaps there were occasions where, when you say no and your brother or your cousin don't really
Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they still, although it comes in a way that is play.
Okay. Has that been a lot in your life? People not listening to you, saying no?
Maybe, I guess. I'm not very sure. Perhaps, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to come out of like facilitator mode and into teacher mode for a second. So there's really clear links for a thread so far, which is when somebody breaches my boundary, I feel invaded, I feel harmed, and either I don't set a boundary, or I set it and it's not respected. And that makes her feel, she said, irritated or frustrated. Mm-hmm. Later on in this module, you're going to see how I class all the emotions as spectrums. So on the anger spectrum, it goes irritation, frustration, anger, rage. So when someone tells you they're irritated, you know that that exists on a spectrum of anger, and that's the emotional thread that you'll be working with. Mm-hmm. So I just want to highlight that there's a very clear thread, which is the unexpressed anger of having a boundary breached. And just a moment ago, we were talking about the idea of you're not listening to me. Is that kind of the thought that goes with it when you feel this irritation or frustration? Or is it something else? It's the thought.
I think it's more of when people breach my boundary, not so much of not listening to me.
And what's the thought that goes with when they breach your boundary?
Like, sometimes I feel like telling them, fuck off.
Fuck off. Okay, good. Do you ever say that?
No, of course.
Okay. This connects to what we were talking about earlier in the session, right? There'll be a lovely, amenable person that's holding in so many fuck offs.
Yes.
Yeah? And often these fuck offs need to come out. However, we're not going into that today. That can be next week. Yeah? This is really good because it gives you guys layers of which to connect to this process from. So knowing, when you think of saying fuck off, that's really angry, right? It's not fuck off, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not irritation, right? That's full blown. How many times do you think in your life you've thought it and never said it?
Wow.
Like roughly?
20, 30, I don't know.
Okay. Quite a few.
More?
Yeah, more. 100?
Could
500?
be.
Yeah. Okay. So we know now in this experience together that that's in you. And the thing that happened with your friend is connecting.
Yeah.
And so there's a very clear emotional thread, which is don't violate my, like when a boundary is violated, I feel angry and I want to say fuck off. Yeah, which is great. We're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Today, so actually I think you would be very fine to go into a deep process right now, but for the purpose of learning, we're not going to go there, and we'll go there next week, or you guys will go there next week. For now, assuming that Dom was a current trauma client that really has so much emotion, what we would want to do is connect to this thread in a really gentle and safe way. So I'm going to say something to you, Dom, like, so knowing that you've connected to this anger and maybe the intensity, having had so many experiences of it, would it be okay today to let some of that experience move through the body here in the room? So we're not going to connect to the story today, just let some of that charge move through and out.
Yes.
Okay? All right. Let's go. Just letting the external world disappear. Allowing your breath to bring you into the body, on the table. This time and space to allow some of that physical charge associated to those feelings of irritation and frustration, perhaps even anger, to move through the physical body. Just making a little bit of space inside you. And I'm going to be here supporting you with my hands, but if you have any very strong emotions or sensations or memories, please tell me, okay? Stay in contact. You can notice how your head's starting to shake from side to side a little, those twitches, and you can allow those. It's almost like your head trying to say no, so you can really let it. Let's see what happens if you allow your jaw to drop a little. Good. Good. And if there is sound that wants to come out, or words, you can allow them. You can just allow your neck to drop into my hand. It's okay. Good. And drop the jaw again. Good. And you can allow that sound to come. Connect to that space tone that's rising in your chest. Just give me a nod if you can feel it. Yeah, good. Just want you to be with that space now. Just allow it to integrate and stay. Space that you've made. Drop your jaw, that's right. Feel the space again. This right hand looks like it wants to do something. What does it want to do? You allow it?
Yeah, it's just stretching the right shoulder. It feels like a shoulder rotation.
Can you find the activation from the shoulder through to the hand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does your hand want to do? I'm going to give a little bit of feedback. What does your hand want to do?
Push.
Yeah, push, go. Harder, you're not going to hurt me. As hard as you can. And relax, relax. Notice your shoulder relaxing now. And Dom, I want you to open and close your right hand a few times, just connecting to the change. It's there. And the ability to push through the hand. Yeah, just integrating that. I'm just going to hold your sacrum for a while to integrate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Did a really good job. Nothing left to do, just let the body integrate. Really let your spine drop into my hands so they can support you. Good. It's okay if the body wants to twitch a little more as it integrates. Taking some nice breaths into the entire body now done. Just connecting to the spaces and changes that have arisen. Space with a little bit of less of that frustration, irritation driving you. And again, just opening and closing that right hand, connecting to its ability, its strength and expression. Good. And take a few more breaths in, becoming aware of the table underneath you and of the room around you. Orienting in time and space. Wiggling your fingers and your toes, very present in the body. And when you're ready, opening your eyes back to full awareness and integrated. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. You sound surprised. Good. Why is
At
it
some point during the integration, I nearly fell asleep. So
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Means your body's integrating. Okay. Would you like to slowly sit up and we can have a chat about it? Would you like some tea?
No, I'm good.
Okay, when you're ready, you can slowly sit up.
It's interesting how it goes on with the usual stretch. I think the neck unwinding, right? And then and not so much coughing this time, which I think is good. And it's cool that how the body knows it wants to regulate the stretch, the different restructuring, and then you kind of support how my neck want to move,
Yes.
and then you supported those, and then there were actually a lot of, I think, more charge here,
Lots, yeah.
right, and then kind of flow out from my hand. I could feel that I didn't have that energy to push at all,
Yeah.
right? And I probably would even feel it more when you're giving me the resistance. So that encouragement from you to, hey, push harder. Yeah, I want, but no, I can't, kind of thing. So after that, I think that sort of, it felt like, I have a new arm kind of thing.
That's nice.
Yeah. I could feel the difference, like, hey, my right hand, my right arm and my left arm is different. Feels lighter, and it feels like, it's also, it feels new.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like you just open up the bubble wrap kind of thing, something new, right? So,
Okay. And you stayed in your body, you didn't go off anywhere, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You asked me to bring my breath to my chest, to the new space that's created.
Okay. I try and explain my take on the session, and then maybe if you have questions, can ask. Is it okay? So first I want to, I guess, disclaim or note, this is not what a usual murky overflow session would look like. So normally this kind of person is probably going to twitch, though you twitched, and shake a bit, and maybe they're going to cry. So the twitching, yes, but mostly it's going to be not so elaborate. They're not going to go into like moving their neck and pushing and this kind of thing. But the similarity is that we're able to stay in the body and let the body do what it wants to do. So that's the similarity. So we knew that we were working with irritation, frustration, anger spectrum, and the invitation was to allow some of it to move through the body, which it did. So in that sense, it's a successful session. You could call it the intention and the session are the same. So that means great. It's always a good thing. I think it's really cool that you were not coughing today, because normally your go-to is coughing.
Yeah.
And it was very, so the idea of supporting the body is exactly right. So when I notice that your head is wanting to do something, I'm going to support with my hands and my words. So I'm going to give a permission, invitation, and I'm going to go with it. And I'm sure as you were watching Chloe, you can see I'm not doing any of the specific holds. I'm actually just responding, oh, her body's going this way. Oh, I'm going to support it. It wants to lift up. Okay, I'm going to respond, and I'm going to support what your body is doing. Mm-hmm. I also invited you to open your jaw a few times. So what can often happen with all emotions, but certainly with anger when it's repressed, is that we end up holding a lot of tension in our jaw and clenching it shut. So I could see her body going to movement, and I could see a tightening happening at the jaw. So I invited her to drop it, and naturally sounds started to come. Sorry, I just need So often when you just give the invitation, just allow your jaw to drop, something's going to shift. It might be that the jaw tremors a bit, or it might be that sound comes, it might be that tears come. So if you notice that there's clenching, particularly when you're wanting to work with release, it's really helpful to invite them to drop the jaw. And then after some of this unwinding, which stayed in this very manageable, lovely space, which again is great, I could really see and feel there was a new fullness to the breath. And so whenever you see that with your client after they've had some discharge, if you notice there's an expansion in breath, that is a cue for you to integrate the change. So anytime you see that when you're working with discharge, whether it's just physical or whether it's emotional, this is really, really important. This is what's going to allow everything you're doing to integrate into the physical body. So I asked Dom to stay with the space and breathe into it. Then all this amazing stuff started happening here. And I know very well that if this were like a proper session where we were really going to go into it, often when there has been issues of boundary breach and there has been like repressed anger, there's also a sense of powerlessness. Always there's been an inability to set your boundaries, say no, walk away and choose differently. And somatically, this is often represented through the arms, sometimes through the legs. The legs is more common when it comes to sexual abuse or like pretty severe beating on the lower body. But often when the body wants to express a boundary, the arms want to get involved and the arms want to push away. What's interesting in this session is that it was your shoulder was trying to do it. So there's a connection from the chest and the throat through the arms, through the hands. It's a very natural, I guess, flow. Your shoulder was going to a process, but your hand was kind of limp. And it was here, and it tried to grab itself. Like there was like an inkling of life. And I don't know if you saw, I actually took her hand to see if she would. But when I took her hand, when I made connection, she went more limp. So that was really interesting. So I thought, okay, and I put her hand down because her hand said, I'm scared of that no, and it retracted further. And then when I put her hand down, it started going that, but it was still really limp like this. And so actually I invited a connection between the shoulder and the hand, because it's like almost this was flaccid and this is going crazy. So somewhere, and this is having like hands that can't push in a somatic session is a very clear sign of disempowerment. I can't, or I'm not allowed, or it's not safe, but actually it is. So again, staying only with the physical aspect, I invited you, can you make a connection? And this is the beauty of hypnotic language and the power of suggestion. All I did say is, can you find it? Done. So the words are really, really powerful. If I hadn't have said anything, she would have stayed. It wouldn't have come through. So I invited a connection, and then I gave her a little, and I asked, once the connection was made, what does your hand want to do? Oh, it wants to push. So we're talking to your hand, we're not talking about you, we're talking to parts of the body. What does your It wants to push. Okay, let's do that. And then what is also really common is that there will be huge hesitation, which you had to push. And it can be like a real physical feeling of, hey, I can't. Or it can be a feeling of, I shouldn't because I don't want to hurt you. Mm-hmm. So as a practitioner, you need to tune into which one of those is it. And so we did a little bit of pushing, and you can feel, I'm giving a bit of feedback resistance to it so that she has something. If I'm not giving it, it's not going to happen. So you've got to meet the push so that there's that shaking or tremor coming through the hand. And when you feel like it's enough, then you can just invite the client to, okay, just relax. And then usually I'll put my hand on like this, and usually there's a lot of release through. And this isn't even getting into sort of the idea of pushing away a perpetrator. We stayed purely in a somatic process of allowing charge to release through the body. But we know, having explored together, that it is linked to anger and that it is linked to not being able to set a boundary. Mm-hmm. So if we were going to go deeper into a session, we would be employing these tools to connect to story and intention, but we didn't do that today. But the concept of how to release charge through the arm stays. Mm-hmm. And we will be exploring how to work with like pushing and discharge both through arms and legs in this module. Mm-hmm. But it just naturally came up today. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then again, once that happened and there was some discharge, again I invited her to connect to the space, and then I let her know pretty much that's it now, it's time to integrate. And as a practitioner, it's really important you feel confident to kind of guide the session, because we could have gone into more. If I didn't craft it or direct it into integration, her head was already starting to go into more of a process. So that's something that as a practitioner you need to realize, either A, they've had enough for today, or time doesn't allow for us to go into something else, and then you have to guide it into integration and let them know, okay, now it's time to let your body integrate. So having that authority is really important as a practitioner. Any questions on that? You, Chloe, any comments or questions?
Yeah, it's good I saw when you caught her hand, and I was wondering like why you did that, because it was quite like sudden watching it. Yeah. So it's good you explained the roots of that. I'm really curious about, you were saying powerlessness and how that links to the arm. So then I would be curious about understanding the body in this way more in the coming sessions.
We will, absolutely. So powerlessness underpins all trauma, all relational trauma. We are powerless to the trauma, to the person harming us. We're powerless to change the situation. And often this manifests through the body as not being able to push, or not being able to kick, or not being able to shake or scream or do all this. So a lot of our job as practitioners is just to sense where the body is almost disabled in its expression, and empower them to let it happen. So if you can consider, and I always come back to physical abuse because it's just the easiest one to demonstrate with, just say someone had been like really badly physically abused, their body will want to rage and they would not have been allowed. So finding a way to let that express through the body in whatever way we can is really important. And picking up the cues when you think something might happen but it's not, signals that you need to help them somatically find power. And something that I often anchor is this opening and closing. So when someone has gone into a pushing, or it's not even always pushing, some people might do this or whatever, you want to connect to them somatically. It's basically, I have power here. So that's really helpful for them to feel, I can. And so I got her to connect to it again at the end. Sometimes I'll use an anchor, like if powerlessness is an actual theme we've been exploring, I might use a hypnotic anchor that says, anytime that you are, feeling disempowered or not able to set a boundary, I want you to just come back to your hands and open and close them, connecting to your ability to do this because you have it now. And this kind of anchor can be really helpful as people go out into life, because change takes time to integrate. It's not automatic. So just say it is around setting boundaries or saying, no, that's not okay for me. What will often happen is someone will go out in their life and they'll get the impetus to set a boundary, and then they'll get afraid, and they can use this anchor to just draw on their power and then go ahead and do it. So finding ways to anchor the positive changes that are presenting somatically through the session can be really, really helpful for the client to go and use it and try and integrate and live the change in their lives.